I'm going to be showing you how I went from this to this, all done on Photoshop. So stay tuned to the end of this video to find out how I got it done. Alright, welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those who are yet to subscribe, do it to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell icon to always get notified when I drop amazing tutorials like this. Now, in my previous tutorial, I actually talked about here I was going to be, getting to respond to requests like this, requests on how a particular design was done or how it was made, right? So this is one of those requests that was made last week on the Telegram community, and I specifically told the person I was going to actually look into it and show him what was done and how it was done, right? So that's that kind of tutorial. Now that's to say that if you're out there as a subscriber both on my YouTube channel and on the Telegram platform, you can as well drop in, or you can ask on how a certain thing was done, and you can be rest assured that it's going to be responded to. All right, so that will be that for now. Let's get right into business. So basically, this is Photoshop 2021, right? Like I said in the previous tutorial, I said I was going to be doing Photoshop tutorials for you guys, so that those with laptops and workspaces can also follow up my YouTube channel and won't be left out, right? So basically what I'm going to be doing today is showing you how you can actually get a simple looking design like this, and transform it into a walking piece of art or a poster, right? That is worth accolades, right? So basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you how you can actually add up rim lights and highlights to your design. I'm also going to walk you through how you can ascertain where to add up your rim lights and your highlights as well, right? So basically we're going to be paying attention to the layer panel right here. As you can see, there's a layer for the first subject and there's a layer for the second subject above it, and every other thing just follows, right, to make up the design briefly on Photoshop, right? So because this particular tutorial is focused on how to add up rim lights and highlights, I actually didn't go in details on how this particular design was made, right? So one thing to know about rim lights or adding rim lights and highlights is that you need to pay attention to your highlights, your midtones, and your shadows, right? So where you can see lights on his neck, those are your highlights, and then the darker parts are your shadows, and then less darker parts are your midtones. Now that's one thing to actually get in mind when you're working on lightings like this, right? You should be able to know how lights work on the subject, right? So that's for that on knowing about how to add up rim lights, right? So we're going to get right into business. Next thing we can do is simply create a new layer by going to the bottom right and clicking on that icon right there to create a new layer. And then what we're going to simply do is to simply clip it to the layer of the first subject by hitting alternate and clicking in between the layers, in between both layers, to allow whatever you're going to do on the empty layer affect only the subject and not the entire design. You understand? Just to make that clear, right? So, and then next thing we're going to do is to simply pick the brush tool right at the left where you have the toolbar, and then I'm simply going to just hit alternate. I'm going to make the brush bigger by hitting the close brackets on my keyboard, and I'm going to simply hit alternate to select a color that is close to where I want to paint over my subject, right? And then after that, next thing I am now going to simply do before I paint over the subject is to go over to my blending mode, and I'm going to simply change the blending mode to linear dodge. And then after doing that, next thing to do is to zoom in, and then I am simply going to paint on the subject where I have the highlights. Remember I said you have your highlights, your midtones, and your shadows. So we're going to be actually concentrating on the highlights of the subject right now. So I forgot to do something. I'm just going to undo that. Once you need to check is you need to check at the top You need to check for your opacity at 100 and your flow you can leave it at 12, right, so that you don't get the whole thing looking too much, right? So I am simply going to paint on the highlights alone, and then let's say for instance you make a mistake to paint on the shadows on the mid tones, right, just like this. I'm actually doing this intentionally. What you can simply do is simply go to the eraser tool and just simply erase the parts that you don't want. As simple as that, just in case you make that mistake and you're already freaking out or not knowing what to do. Next thing I'm going to do is double click on that empty layer, and then I'm simply going to load up a blend if effect. Now for some reason this was not showing while I was doing the screen recording, but once you double click on that blend if effect, what you can do is simply go down below and then you see a slider. Now there are two sliders. You can actually click on the the second one, and then you can slide it to the right. But before you do that, hit alternate, and then you can break it up. You can break the slider into two. So you're going to slide the right hand and the right slider to the right, and then you're going to slide the second slider, which you have broken apart, to the right a bit, right? So why I did that is so that I can simply fade out or sort of blend the highlights we are currently adding to the subject to make it more human appealing, right? So that's just something to note. Okay, so now basically I'm just continually doing what I did before in the previous design. As you can see, this is before, this is after, right? So I'm simply going to take my time to do this process as slow as possible, and then I'll speed up the process afterwards. Now what I'm simply doing is I'm simply renaming this as the highlights. Now all you can do is double click and you can rename as the highlights. Now I simply just create another empty layer, and I'm going to rename this as the rim lights. Remember I said this is a tutorial for how to add up rim lights and hard lights, or highlights rather. So for this rim light, I'm going to call it left rim light, right, because I want a certain form of more harsher light at the edge of my subject, so I'm going to call that left rim light. Now what I'm simply going to do is go to the blending option to change this to hard, right? I'm going to change this to hard light. That's for the rim light. Do not get it mistaken. The rim light, the blending option is the highlights. Then for the highlights, the blending option is the linear dodge, right? So something to note. Now on the rim lights panel, what you can simply do is select a lighter color like you just saw on the screen, and I'm just going to paint on the edges of my subject right here, just like so. Oh sorry, before I do that, let me quickly undo this. I'm going to double click right here, and then I'm going to simply just make some tweaks to it. Now I don't know, for some reason this actually did not show while I was recording the video, and it's simply just a bummer. But nevertheless, when you double click on the rim light, right, you're going to go to outer glow, and then you're simply going to go to the opacity. You're going to leave the opacity at 80, and then you're going to leave the size at 5. Every other thing can remain the same. And then right on the outer glow, you can also change the blending modes to hard lights, you understand, so that you can achieve the same results right here on this particular tutorial. So just like you're seeing on screen, I'm actually adding some sort of hard lights to the design. Now this is the before, and then this is the after. So the difference are sort of subtle, but it actually means a lot if you're someone who really pays attention to details, right? So basically I'm going to simply continually paint on the rim lights layer to give it some sort of depth to the image, just like so. So I'm going to also go over to the next region where I have I have some highlights. I'm going to just simply paint like that. So basically this particular part, I am taking it as slow as possible so that you can get the basic concept behind adding up rim lights and adding up highlights to any of your design piece or any picture, right? And then the other process, I'm going to speed it up so that you can follow through. They're all the same thing. You get that I did for this particular one. That's what I'm going to do for the other image and for other places where I'm going to be having highlights and rim lights as well, right? So I'm basically done with this particular image right here. So you can see the difference, right, for the highlights and the difference for the rim lights. So what I'm going to do next is I'm simply going to just look for places where I have highlights, and then I'm going to, as I did before, select a color by hitting alternate while your brush tool is selected, and then just paint on where you have lights or sharp lights on your subject or on the picture. I don't know why I always keep calling it subject, but nevertheless it's so good. All right, so basically, as you can see right here, I'm also painting across the ears. Now if you noticed, my flow is at about 12%. That's because I want a lot of control over what I'm painting on, because if the flow is at 100, then it might literally be too obvious, and we actually want to keep things subtle, right? So what I'm briefly doing is using the eraser to soften the edges of what I just painted, so that it looks more realistic and more appealing to the human eyes, right? So I'm basically just going to speed up the remaining process so that we can call the tutorial wrap. As you all know, I really don't like to waste time in my videos. So when I'm done with the highlights and the rim lights for all parts of the image, I'll do it to get back to you guys and explain further what I did. So now that we have the highlights and rim lights all in place, next I'm going to do is bring in a flare, and then I'm simply going to change blend mode to screen right here. And then what I'm going to now do is to reduce the size of the flare, and then I'm going to hit Control on my keyboard, right, to sort of alter the perspective of the flare, right, to something like this, and then we're simply going to rotate. And then what I want to do next is to sort of have a little control over the flare. I really don't want it looking too fake. So what I'm going to do is to pick a brush to sort of brush the parts that I don't want. But what I'm going to do first is to come down to the bottom right and create a layer mask by clicking on that icon right here. So on this layer mask, I can now pick a brush tool, and then I can now paint on the flare. Now remember to always keep your your brush to the black background, right? Let your foreground color be at the black, like as you're seeing at the bottom left where you have the toolbox, right? So what I'm simply doing is painting the unwanted areas I don't want on the flare, so that I can actually have a little bit of realism to the flare, right? Because I don't want it spilling too much on the beards, right? So after that is being done, next I'm going to do is create a US saturation adjustment layer by clicking on that icon, and I'm going to clip it to the flare alone. And then what I'm going to simply do is drag the slider till I get something red, so that I can actually match the background of what we have going on this beautiful poster right here, right? So that you can actually match, because the flare I brought in wasn't really matching, it wasn't really giving, right? So that's for that. Now the next thing I am going to do is to simply bring up another effect. Now this is a sort of like a texture, right? And I can simply also change the blend mode to screen, right? So I'm simply just messing around with different blend mode to see which works better. So I think I will either go with screen or this particular blend mode right here, and I'm going to drop the opacity just like so, like the way you're seeing on screen right now, right? So I think I'll change the blend mode to screen or light. Okay, I think that works. All right, the next thing I'm also going to do is bring in another effect or another texture, which is what I call light leaks, right? You can do it to check it out on Pinterest. You can search light leaks, and then you can have it on you can have it downloaded via Pinterest if you have an account, and then you can apply it to whatever design you want to apply it on. Right, so I'm simply going to just simply bring that up into Photoshop, and then we will be almost done with this design. Now, having the light leak on Photoshop, I'm simply going to also change the blend mode to screen, and then I am simply going to take it up, and then I'm going to scale up a bit, just like so. Now, if you notice, the edges of the light leak are really not what we want. We want something realistic, so I'm also going to create a layer mask by clicking on that icon, and then I'm going to pick the brush tool, make sure my foreground color is black, then I'm going to simply erase those sharp edges that I was having not too long ago, right? That's for that. Now, next I'm going to do is bring up another light leak, and then I'm going to simply add it up to the design. And so we have this right here. I'm simply going to scale up, and I'm going to change the blend mode to screen also, just like we have it right here. So basically, for the person who actually wanted to know how lights like this or light effects like this, as he mentioned, it's been applied to designs using Photoshop. These are the ways you can actually apply light effects to your designs on Photoshop, right? So as you can see, they are pretty straightforward and they are pretty simple to do and to create and to get as well, right? So it's just for you to know the keywords to use, and you can search this effect out, right? So the effects we basically use were flares and light leaks, and also there was one we used which was kind of like a rumpled paper texture, right? So with these keywords you can actually get the elements I used, and of course you can also be rest assured that you have the elements used on the Telegram community where you can actually recreate, and of course you can send to me if you want, just to see what you did. All right, that would be very, very nice to actually know how you were able to get it done. All right, so basically we're definitely done with this tutorial, right? And then as you all know, I always love to add a little bit of enhancements to my design, right? And I did talk about in my previous tutorial how you can actually get my presets, right? Just to help you out, just in case you went through the tutorial on how to add up flares and how to add up or rather how to edit your design, and you're not really getting the result that you want, right? So but right, that's for that basically, right? So since this is actually a Photoshop tutorial, I wanted everything to be strictly Photoshop, everything done on the one workspace. So what I did was to take this design to Camera Raw filter, and then I edited the design to get the result you'll be seeing soon on your screen, right? So I'm going to actually make tutorials on that. If you want tutorials on that, on how to edit your design using Camera Raw filter, you can also do it. Let me know in the comment section down below. All right, so please do it to subscribe to the channel. If you're not subscribed, do it to like, do it to comment, and do it to share to your friends, and then oh, I found the channel where you can actually do crazy designs with your phone and with your laptop. That'll be all for now. See you soon next tutorial. Bye for now.